The confession paper was already on the table before anyone found the ring. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the diamond flashing under the chandelier. Not Celeste Vale's perfect tears. Not the way every man in the private dining room turned to look at me like my apron had suddenly become a prison uniform. The paper. White. Crisp. Fresh from the office printer. My name typed across the top. Maya Ellis. I stood there with a tray of untouched espresso cups shaking against my palms while Dominic Moretti sat at the head of the table, silent enough to make the whole room breathe carefully. People in Chicago knew his name without saying it too loudly. They knew the black SUVs outside. They knew the men by the entrance who never looked at their phones, never laughed, never needed to repeat an order. They knew Moretti's was not just an old Italian restaurant with red leather booths and framed family photographs. It was his roof. And under his roof, his fiancée pointed one manicured finger at me. She stole it, Celeste said, her voice breaking in exactly the right place. My engagement ring was on the table when I went to the ladies' room. Now it's gone. The manager, Mr. Harlan, moved too fast. Like he had been waiting for the sentence. He grabbed my tray before it could slip and leaned close enough for me to smell the mint on his breath. Apologize, he whispered. Sign the statement. Maybe we can keep the police out of it. Police. My knees almost folded. Around us, the guests stared over crystal glasses and half-finished veal. One woman pulled her purse closer. A man in a navy suit smirked like he had seen girls like me ruin themselves before. Celeste dabbed under one eye with a linen napkin. I trusted her near my things. I looked at Dominic then. Not because I thought he would save me. Men like him did not save waitresses. He was still, broad-shouldered in a black suit, his expression carved from stone. But his eyes moved once, to my hands, then to the paper. Mr. Harlan shoved a pen toward me. Sign it, Maya. The room tightened. I saw my name again. Saw the words admitting theft. Saw the blank line waiting to swallow my life. Then I saw the time printed in the corner. My fear went cold. I lifted my eyes to Celeste, then to Dominic Moretti. And with the whole restaurant watching, I asked the one question nobody had asked. Why was my confession printed before your ring went missing? For the first time that night, Celeste stopped crying. Dominic's hand closed slowly around the stem of his glass. And behind me, Mr. Harlan whispered, "You stupid girl." Mr. Harlan got me out of that room before Dominic Moretti could answer. He didn't grab my arm. He was too careful for that with Moretti's men watching. He just stepped close, smiled like a manager handling a difficult customer, and used his body to steer me through the swinging kitchen door. The second it closed behind us, the warmth of the dining room vanished. The kitchen was all metal and steam, garlic burning in a pan, dishwater splashing, line cooks pretending not to listen. My heart was still trapped back at that table with my name on a confession I had never written. Harlan backed me into the service alley between stacked crates of tomatoes and a rolling rack of clean napkins. "You don't understand what you just did," he said. I asked a question. "You embarrassed his fiancée. She accused me of stealing." His smile dropped. "People like her make accusations. People like you survive them." The words hit harder because they sounded like advice, not cruelty. Behind him, through the small round window in the kitchen door, I saw one of Dominic's men turn his head. He was tall, in a black coat, standing near the private room entrance like a shadow with a heartbeat. Another man joined him. They spoke to the hostess, and she pointed toward the kitchen. Then both of them looked my way. Harlan saw me notice. "They're already asking for your full name," he whispered. "Your address is in the employee file. Your emergency contact too. So before you decide to become brave, remember who can be found." My stomach went hollow. Because I could be found. My life was written down in too many cheap places. On the lease taped inside my kitchen drawer. On the overdue notice from Commonwealth Edison. On the pharmacy receipt folded beside my mother's blood pressure pills. On the repair estimate for my dying Honda that still sat in my glove box because $412 might as well have been $4,000. Rent was due Monday. My mother's prescription refill was due tomorrow. And I had picked up a double shift that night because tips from Moretti's private dinner could have bought groceries without using the credit card I was already afraid to open. One accusation could take all of that. I knew because it had happened before. Different restaurant. Different rich woman. Same look in everyone's eyes when she said a bracelet was missing and my apron pockets were searched in front of the lunch rush. They found nothing, but nobody remembered that part. They only remembered that my name had been said out loud beside the word thief. That was why the confession paper had scared me more than Celeste's tears. Paper stayed. Paper followed you. 2 years of night paralegal classes had taught me that much before my mother got sick and tuition became impossible. Dates mattered. Times mattered. Printed words could ruin a person when powerful people wanted the lie to look official. Harlan shoved the pen against my apron. Sign it now, he said. Say you panicked. Say you're sorry. I'll tell them you cooperated. My hands were cold, but my voice came out steady. No, his eyes hardened. From the dining room, Celeste's laugh floated through the door, soft and bright, like nothing ugly had happened. Then the kitchen door swung open. One of Dominic Moretti's men stood there, looking straight at me. Mr. Moretti wants the waitress back in the room, he said. Now. I walked back into that private dining room with my apron strings digging into my waist and the pen still pressed against my palm. Not because I had agreed to sign. Because Mr. Harlan had curled my fingers around it like a warning. The room looked different when I returned. The candles were still burning. The wine still glowed dark red in crystal glasses. The plates still held food that cost more than I made in a shift. But now 2 of Dominic Moretti's men stood near the doors, one by the hallway, one by the curtain that separated the private room from the rest of the restaurant. No one had raised a voice. No one had drawn a weapon. That somehow made it worse. Power in that room did not need to announce itself. It sat at the head of the table in a black suit, watching everything. Dominic Moretti had not moved from his chair. His face gave nothing away, but the people around him had changed. The men who had laughed at Celeste's little comments were quiet now. The women who had stared at me like I was something spilled on the floor were suddenly careful with their eyes. Celeste stood beside his chair with one hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Like a crown claiming a throne. Maya, she said softly, tasting my name like it belonged to her. I know you're scared. Just tell the truth and this can be handled privately. Privately meant buried. Privately meant signed paper, lost job, police threat, and my name whispered through every restaurant manager's office in the city. Mr. Harlan stepped in behind me. Too close. Miss Vale is being generous, he said. The confession is simple. 1 page. She admits she took the ring during service and returned it after being confronted. Dominic's eyes shifted to him. She, he said. Harlan swallowed. Maya, sir. My skin prickled. He had not asked Harlan. He had made him correct himself. Celeste's fingers tightened on Dominic's shoulder for half a second, then relaxed. I looked down at the table. The confession paper sat beside a folded cream-colored note. The note had been opened and smoothed flat, but one corner curled up like it had been handled too much. A faint glossy mark stained the fold. Not water. Not oil. Something floral and sharp floated up when I got close. Celeste's perfume. It was expensive enough to fill a room without asking permission. She had walked past me earlier, and the scent had clung to my sleeve after she brushed against the coffee station. Gardenia, amber, something cold underneath. I did not touch the note. That was one thing paralegal classes had drilled into me before life taught me harder lessons. Do not touch what powerful people will later claim you changed. So I only leaned close enough to read the first line. I'm sorry. I needed the money. The sentence was almost funny. I needed money. Everyone in that room could probably smell that on me as clearly as dish soap and coffee. But I would never write it like that. I would never confess in clean little printed sentences while I was still standing there with a tray in my hands. Celeste noticed me looking. Her voice sharpened. That's the note she left in my purse. I didn't leave a note. A man near the wall gave a small laugh. Of course you didn't. Dominic did not look at him. He only lifted 2 fingers, and the laugh died so fast it felt cut from the air. Then Celeste reached for the paper. Not the confession. The note. She slid it closer to Dominic before I could read the rest, her diamondless hand trembling beautifully for everyone watching. She's trying to confuse this, Celeste whispered. She asked that question because she knows how paperwork works. That's what thieves do. They look for technicalities. My heart hit once, hard. She knew exactly where to press. Mr. Harlan moved beside me and spoke low enough that only I could hear. Last chance. Across the table, Dominic Moretti looked from the printed confession to the folded note, then finally to me. Waitress, he said quietly. Tell me what you saw. Before I could answer, Celeste's hand came down on my name tag. And she ripped it clean off my apron. The plastic pin tore through the cloth with a sound so small it should not have hurt. But it did. My name tag hit the table face up between Dominic's wineglass and Celeste's empty ring box. Maya. 5 letters in chipped white plastic. The corner was cracked from the night I dropped it in the dish pit and glued it back together before my shift because I could not afford a replacement fee. It was nothing to anyone in that room. To me, it was proof I belonged at work. Celeste stared at it like it was trash. See, she said, her voice shaking again now that everyone was watching. This is exactly what I mean. She stands here pretending to be innocent, asking clever little questions, while my ring is gone and some disgusting note is sitting on my table. A woman near the fireplace whispered, "How awful." Another guest looked me up and down, from my scuffed black shoes to the coffee stain on my sleeve. I felt every inch of my uniform. Every frayed seam. Every place where poverty showed no matter how clean I kept it. Mr. Harlan bent and picked up my name tag with 2 fingers, like it had germs. I apologize, Miss Vale, he said. This employee will be terminated immediately. Employee. Not Maya. Not waitress. Not woman. Just a problem to remove before dessert. He turned to Dominic. Sir, I'll handle it. We don't need to disturb your evening any further. Dominic did not answer him. His eyes were still on me. Not on Celeste's tears. Not on the guests. Not even on the ring box. On me. More precisely, on my right hand. I realized I was gripping the pen so tightly my fingers had gone white. My thumb was pressed over the tip to keep it from shaking. I was scared enough to throw up, scared enough to sign anything just to make the room stop looking at me. But I had not signed. Dominic saw that. Celeste saw him seeing it. Her face changed so quickly most people would have missed it. The grief slipped for half a second, replaced by something flat and cold. Then she stepped closer to me. You should be grateful I'm not screaming for the police, she said softly. Do you know what happens to girls like you when men like him decide you're a thief? The room went too quiet. That was the first honest thing she had said. Because yes, I knew. I knew powerful people did not have to shout to ruin you. They only had to say your name beside the right lie, in the right room, with the right witnesses nodding along. My throat burned. I looked at my name tag in Harlan's hand. The cracked corner. The bent pin. The little smudge of silver nail polish from when my mother had tried to make it look nicer at our kitchen table. Then I looked at the confession paper. If I signed it, I might leave that room alive with my job gone, my record stained, and my mother asking why I was home before midnight. If I refused, I might not even get that far. But there are some lies that take more from you when you survive them than when you fight them. I set the pen down on the table. Not threw it. Set it down. The sound was barely more than a click, but every head turned. I won't sign a lie. Mr. Harlan's mouth tightened. Maya. I kept my eyes on Dominic, because if I looked at anyone else, fear might win. I did not take her ring. I did not write that note. And I won't apologize for asking why a confession with my name on it existed before anyone accused me. A murmur moved through the room. Small. Uneasy. A few guests glanced at the paper for the first time like it had become something other than proof against me. Celeste laughed once, sharp and ugly under all that polish. She's playing smart because she knows you hate weakness, Dominic. Dominic's jaw shifted. Just once. Then he reached across the table and took my name tag from Harlan's hand. He did not give it back to me. He placed it beside the confession paper. Carefully. Like my name mattered as much as hers. Enough, he said. The word did not sound loud. It did not need to. Even the candles seemed to hold still. Dominic looked at me. Tell the room what you noticed. Celeste's hand closed over the folded note before I could speak. And that was when everyone saw she was trying to hide it. Celeste's hand stayed on the folded note like it had suddenly become warm enough to burn her. No one spoke. The room that had believed her so easily now had to watch her protect a piece of paper she claimed proved I was guilty. Dominic looked at her fingers first. Then at her face. Move your hand, he said. Celeste's smile came back, but it was thinner now. Dominic, don't do this. She's a waitress. She's scared. She'll say anything. I asked her. 2 words. That was all it took for Celeste's hand to lift from the note. I did not feel safe. Not even close. The men by the doors were still there. Mr. Harlan was still behind me. My name tag still lay on the table beside a confession that could end my life in one signature. But for the first time since Celeste pointed at me, the room had stopped swallowing her version whole. I stepped closer to the table, careful not to touch anything. The confession says I took the ring during dessert service, I said. My voice sounded too small in that expensive room, but it did not break. I kept going. It says I panicked after Miss Vale confronted me, and then I admitted everything because I felt guilty. Celeste crossed her arms. Which is exactly what happened. No, I said. It isn't. Mr. Harlan let out a warning breath behind me. I looked down at the bottom corner of the page, where the printer had stamped the date and time in pale gray numbers. That paper was printed at 8:42 p.m. A man at the far end of the table leaned forward. Celeste blinked. So? I swallowed. The chandelier light made the paper too bright. My eyes wanted to blur. I forced them not to. You told everyone your ring disappeared when you went to the ladies' room after dessert. Dessert didn't leave the kitchen until 8:55. I know because I was waiting on the espresso order at the service station when the tiramisu went out. The room shifted. Not loudly. Not kindly. Just enough. Forks paused. Shoulders turned. A woman in pearls glanced at Celeste's empty ring box, then at the page. I felt it like a change in weather. Doubt. Small, but real. Celeste laughed under her breath. This is ridiculous. She memorized a time. That doesn't mean anything. It means someone printed a confession 13 minutes before the thing it described happened. My mouth had gone dry, but the words came easier now because they were not feelings. They were facts. Facts had edges. Facts could hold weight when people tried to bend them. I took paralegal classes, I said, before anyone could ask how I knew to look. Not enough to matter to people like you. But enough to know a statement written before an incident is not a confession. It's a setup. The word setup hit the table harder than I expected. Celeste's face tightened. Mr. Harlan moved so close his sleeve brushed mine. Maya, you are done here. I turned my head just enough to see him. Behind his manager's smile was pure panic. And that scared me more than his anger. Because panic made people careless. Panic made people cruel. Panic made people push a poor waitress under the nearest bus and call it protecting the business. My employee file has my address, I said quietly. You already reminded me. Dominic's eyes cut to Harlan. The manager went pale. Celeste seized the moment. Do you hear her? She's threatening the restaurant now. She knows legal words, Dominic. She knows how to twist a document. For all we know, she printed that confession herself to create confusion after stealing my ring. A few guests looked back at me, uncertain again. That was how fast truth could lose balance in a room built for rich people. Celeste pointed at the folded note. And that note proves intent. She needed money. She wrote it herself. I looked at the note again. The first line sat there in neat black print. I'm sorry. I needed the money. But my eyes were drawn to the fold, to the faint shiny stain across the cream paper, and to the scent lifting from it every time the candle heat moved the air. Gardenia. Amber. Cold underneath. Celeste's perfume. Dominic noticed me looking. What else? He asked. Celeste's smile vanished. And I realized the next truth was going to cost me even more. The scent should not have mattered. That was what I told myself as I stood in a room full of people who wanted any reason to stop listening to me. A perfume stain was not a confession. It was not a signed admission. It was not a diamond ring sitting in someone's hand. It was just a glossy mark across cream paper. But the note had been folded, pressed, and opened again. Whoever handled it last had left part of herself behind. And Celeste Vale smelled exactly like that stain. I looked at Dominic, then at the folded note, careful to keep my hands at my sides. I need to say this without touching it. Celeste's laugh came quick. Of course you do. Because if you touch it, everyone will know you're trying to contaminate your own evidence. My evidence? I asked. The room went still again. Celeste's face tightened. I wished I had not said it. I wished I could swallow it back and become invisible, just one more waitress clearing plates while rich people ruined each other in private. But the words had already landed, and Dominic's eyes had sharpened like he had heard the same thing I did. Celeste had called the note mine before anyone proved it. Dominic turned his head slightly toward the man at the door. No one touches that paper. The man nodded once. Celeste's mouth opened. Dominic, no one, he repeated. He did not look angry. That was the frightening part. He looked exact. Like every word in the room now had a cost. I took one breath and pointed, not too close, at the curled corner of the note. The fold has perfume on it, I said. Not on the flat part where it would have been if someone sprayed the table. On the crease. That means it was folded or pressed while the perfume was fresh. Celeste rolled her eyes. Now she's a perfume expert? No, I said. I'm a waitress. A few guests looked confused, like they expected me to be ashamed of that. I wasn't. Waitresses notice what people leave behind. Lipstick on glasses. Allergies no one tells us about. Which guest moved a purse? Which guest touched a plate? Which guest sent back a drink they never tasted? My voice grew steadier because this was my world, not theirs. Earlier tonight, Miss Vale brushed past the coffee station and her perfume stayed on my sleeve for almost 10 minutes. Same smell. Gardenia, amber, something sharp underneath. It's on that note. Celeste's face flushed. So what? She snapped. I touched the note after I found it. I nodded once. Maybe. Her eyes narrowed. It was the first time she had not known where I was going. But you said it was in your purse. You said you pulled it out after you found the ring missing. If you only found it then, the perfume would be on the outside where your fingers touched it. not sealed into the fold. A low murmur moved around the table. Mr. Harlan stepped forward fast. This is absurd. She's guessing. I might be, I said. The admission hurt, but it was the truth. And truth was the only thing I had left. I could be wrong about the perfume. I could be wrong about the fold. But I'm not wrong about the time on that confession. Celeste turned to Dominic, her voice dropping into something wounded and intimate. You're letting her humiliate me at our engagement dinner. Dominic looked at her hand on his sleeve. Then he looked at me. Not kindly. Not softly. Seriously. Are you sure enough to keep talking? He asked. The question scared me more than any threat, because it gave me a choice. If I kept going and I was wrong, would not just lose my job. I would have accused the future Mrs. Moretti in front of his family, his men, his guests, and every person who could make sure I never worked in Chicago again. My mother's prescription flashed in my mind. Rent due Monday. My name beside thief. I looked at the confession paper. Then at my broken name tag lying beside it. I'm sure enough not to sign. Dominic's gaze stayed on me for one long second. Then he pushed back his chair. Every person in the room straightened. He did not come toward me. He did not offer a hand. He did not call me sweetheart or promise to fix my life. He simply stood between me and the door Mr. Harlan had been trying to move me toward. She stays, Dominic said. The paper stays. The note stays. And she speaks until I have the truth. Celeste's eyes went dark. Mr. Harlan whispered something I could not hear. Then Celeste lifted her chin, smiled at me like a blade, and said, Fine. Let her keep talking. Then let's see if she's brave enough when the ring is found on her. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then every eye in the room dropped to my apron. The front pocket hung slightly open from where Celeste had ripped my name tag off. I looked down at it too, and a cold, terrible understanding moved through me before anyone said a word. Celeste was not guessing. She was waiting. Mr. Harlan took one step toward me. Empty your pockets. Dominic's voice cut through the room. Stop. Harlan froze with his hand halfway out. Celeste turned to Dominic, offended and wounded at the same time. You heard her question me. You heard her accuse me. If she has nothing to hide, let her show us. A few guests nodded. Not because they were sure I was guilty anymore, but because people love a simple ending when the truth makes them uncomfortable. The waitress made a clever speech. The waitress had the ring. Everyone could go back to dessert. I felt my pulse in my throat. Dominic looked at me. Do you consent? The question nearly broke me. Not because it was soft. Because no one in that room had asked me for consent to anything until then. My manager had pushed a pen into my hand. Celeste had torn my name off my chest. Strangers had searched my character with their eyes. But the most dangerous man in Chicago asked before anyone touched my apron. I nodded once. If I don't, I said, they'll say that proves it. Dominic's face did not change, but something in his eyes darkened. He turned to his man by the door. Not Harlan. The man stepped forward. Celeste's lips pressed together. That small reaction told me more than her tears ever had. Dominic's man did not grab me. He held out his hand and waited. I reached into my apron pocket myself. My fingers touched folded order slips. A wine key. 2 wrapped peppermints from the hostess stand. Then metal. Hard. Cold. My stomach dropped so violently I thought I might fall. I pulled it out. The diamond ring sat in my palm, bright and impossible under the chandelier. Celeste gasped like someone had stabbed her. There, she whispered. There it is. The room turned on me again. Not all at once this time. Slowly. Shamefully. Like people hated themselves for believing me even for a minute. Mr. Harlan exhaled in relief. The man in the navy suit gave a bitter little smile. Well, that answers that. No. Everything inside me said no. But the ring was in my hand. My hand. My apron. My uniform. My name already lying beside the confession like a body beside a weapon. Celeste reached for the ring. Give it to me. Dominic's hand came down over the table before she touched it. No one takes it. His voice was quiet, but the room obeyed. Celeste stared at him. Dominic, it's mine. And now it is evidence. The word made her flinch. I saw it. So did he. The ring glittered in my palm, heavy with all the power I did not have. If this had been any other restaurant, any other man, any other night, that would have been the end of me. A planted ring was still a ring. A poor waitress with a diamond in her pocket did not get nuance. She got handcuffs. She got fired. She got remembered wrong. My fingers started to close around it, then stopped. I set the ring on the table beside the confession, the note, and my broken name tag. 4 objects. One story someone wanted the room to believe. But the story had a seam. I looked at the confession first. Printed before the ring was missing. Then the note. Perfume pressed into the fold. Then the ring. Found exactly where Celeste had threatened it would be found. That was not bad luck. That was choreography. Celeste watched me with wet eyes and a perfect trembling mouth. You still want to lie? She asked. After everyone saw it come from your pocket? I looked past her shoulder. To the corner of the private room. There was a small black dome tucked above the carved wood paneling near the service entrance. It had been there all night, half hidden by shadow and fake ivy, the kind of thing servers noticed because cameras decided who got blamed when rich guests complained. My breath caught. I remembered Celeste brushing past me at the coffee station. Her perfume on my sleeve. Her hand touching my apron while she apologized for almost knocking into me. Her smile when she said, "Careful, sweetheart." I had thought she was warning me about the espresso tray. She was not. I turned to Dominic. If I stole it, I said, then the camera by the service entrance will show me taking it from the table. Celeste's eyes flashed. I kept going before fear could stop me. But if I didn't, it will show who came close enough to put it in my apron. The room went completely still. Even Mr. Harlan stopped breathing like a man waiting for a door to open onto something he could not survive. Dominic looked up at the black dome in the corner. Then he looked at Celeste. For the first time that night, her tears were gone. Dominic's voice dropped so low every person leaned in to hear it. Bring up the footage. Dominic's man did not leave the room. He took one step to the side, touched something near the service entrance, and a flat screen hidden behind the wine shelves came alive with a pale blue glow. My own face appeared first. Small. Tired. Blurry from the angle. I watched myself moving between the coffee station and the private table with a tray balanced on one hand, my hair pinned badly at the back of my neck, my apron pocket hanging open like it had been waiting to betray me. No one breathed. Celeste stood very still beside Dominic's chair. The footage rolled without sound, and somehow that made it worse. Every movement became sharper. Every glance became guilty or innocent depending on who wanted it that way. There I was, setting down espresso cups. There was Celeste, rising from her chair. There was the ring, still on her finger. My heart struck my ribs. On the screen, Celeste brushed past me at the coffee station. Exactly the way I remembered. Her shoulder touched mine. Her lips curved into that pretty little apology. Her hand dipped near my apron, quick and smooth, almost graceful. If you were not looking for it, you might have missed the motion completely. But now the whole room was looking. Dominic lifted one hand. The footage froze. Celeste's hand was halfway inside my apron pocket. The diamond ring flashed between her fingers. For a moment, the world did not feel real. The thing that had nearly destroyed me was right there, bright and undeniable, trapped inside a silent second no lie could talk over. A woman at the table covered her mouth. The man in the navy suit looked down at his plate. Mr. Harlan made a sound like the air had gone out of him. Celeste whispered, "That doesn't show what you think it shows." Dominic did not turn toward her. "Play it." His man tapped the screen again. The footage moved forward. Celeste's hand slid out of my apron empty. Then she straightened, touched my shoulder, and smiled at me. "Careful, sweetheart." I could not hear the words, but I remembered them so clearly my skin went cold. The image continued. Celeste returned to the table. She sat. She laughed. She lifted her diamondless hand to her throat like she had only just realized something precious was missing. Then the performance began. Her mouth opened. Her chair scraped back. Every head turned toward me. And now everyone in that room saw the lie happen from the outside. Not as a rich woman's pain. Not as a waitress's guilt. As choreography. Dominic's gaze moved from the screen to Celeste. The room seemed to shrink away from her. Celeste's eyes shone, but the tears did not fall this time. "I was protecting you," she said quickly. "You don't understand." She was asking questions all night. She was watching everything. I thought she was, enough. The word landed like a door closing. Celeste reached for him. "Dominic, please." He looked at her hand before it touched his sleeve. She stopped. That was the first visible consequence. The woman who had claimed him all night could no longer touch him. Dominic removed the ring from the table with a folded napkin and set it beside the confession paper, the note, and my cracked name tag. 4 objects. The lie, the planted proof, the staged apology, and the name she tried to take from me. Then he looked at the guests. "All of you heard her accused." No one answered. "You will also hear her cleared." My throat tightened so hard I could barely stand. Dominic turned to Mr. Harlan. "Say her name." Harlan blinked. "Sir?" "Her name." The manager looked at me like seeing me cost him something. "Maya Ellis." Again. "Maya Ellis." Dominic's voice stayed calm. "Maya Ellis did not steal from this table. She did not write that note. She did not confess to anything. Any record you created tonight gets corrected before she leaves this building." Harlan nodded too fast. "Yes, sir." "And you," Dominic added, "will not manage another shift under my roof until I decide whether fear made you stupid or bought." Harlan went gray. That was the second consequence. The man who had tried to push a pen into my hand now looked like he needed someone to hold him upright. Celeste backed away from the table. "You can't humiliate me like this." Dominic finally faced her fully. "You used my name to frame a woman who serves under my roof. You used my engagement to make your lie untouchable. And you thought poverty would make her easier to break." Celeste's mouth trembled. "I made a mistake." "No," he said. "A mistake is spilling wine. This was a plan." His eyes moved to the folded note. "My lawyer will take the confession and the note. He will decide how many laws you broke trying to make a waitress carry your shame." Celeste's face collapsed. That was the third consequence. Not shouting. Not drama. Just the clean removal of protection she had mistaken for ownership. Dominic's man stepped beside her, not touching, only waiting. Dominic looked at him. "Miss Vale is no longer welcome in this restaurant. Or any room owned by my family." The words emptied the last color from her face. She looked around for sympathy and found none. Not from the guests who had believed her. Not from Harlan. Not from the women who had pulled their purses closer when she pointed at me. For one sharp second, her eyes met mine. There was hatred there. But beneath it, there was fear. Because the room had finally done what my question asked it to do. It had looked. Dominic's man guided her toward the door. She did not cry this time. She walked out stiff-backed, diamondless, followed by the sound of every person refusing to speak her name. When the door closed behind her, the restaurant felt different. Not safe. Not healed. But balanced enough for me to breathe. Dominic turned back to the table and picked up my cracked name tag. He did not hand it to me yet. He only held it in his palm, thumb resting beside the broken corner. Then he looked at me in front of everyone who had doubted me. "You asked the right question," he said. My eyes burned. For the first time that night, no one called me thief. No one called me girl. No one called me employee. They looked at me like Maya Ellis was a name worth remembering. After midnight, the private dining room smelled like cold espresso, melted candle wax, and the kind of silence people leave behind when they are ashamed. The guests were gone. Celeste was gone. Mr. Harlan's office door stayed closed, and for once, nobody called my name like it was a problem to fix. I stood alone beside the table where everything had happened, wiping a water ring from the polished wood because my hands needed something ordinary to do. The confession paper was gone from the table. The ring was gone too. The folded note was gone. Only the faint dent from my tray remained in the linen. I thought I would feel powerful when it was over. I didn't. I felt tired. Tired in my bones. Tired in the place where fear had been living for years, waiting for another rich woman, another accusation, another room full of people deciding I was guilty because my shoes were cheap and my voice shook. Then Dominic Moretti stepped into the doorway. No guards beside him this time. No guests watching. Just him, still in that black suit, holding something small between his fingers. My name tag. The cracked corner had been smoothed down. The bent pin had been fixed. Someone had cleaned the coffee stain from the white plastic, but they had not made it new. I was glad. New would have felt like pretending. He held it out. "I had it repaired," he said. "Not replaced." I took it carefully. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The restaurant hummed around us, old pipes, distant traffic, the soft buzz of the exit sign. I ran my thumb over my name. Maya. Not thief. Not girl. Not employee. Maya. "Your job is yours," he said. "No one here will touch your schedule, your tips, or your name because of what happened tonight." My throat tightened. He did not say it like a gift. He said it like a correction. Then his voice changed, just enough for me to hear the man beneath the power. "I'm sorry they made you prove the truth before they gave you respect." I looked at him then. The most feared man in that room had been the only one who asked before taking anything from me. The only one who protected my right to speak instead of demanding my gratitude. "You believed the question," I said. "No," he answered quietly. "I believed the woman brave enough to ask it." He stepped back after that. Leaving space. Leaving choice. I pinned the name tag onto my apron myself, right over my heart. And for the first time in years, my name did not feel like something the world could take from me.